Welcome to Andertons TV. I'm Rob.
I'm Tobes.
And today we're going to talk about, guess what, snare wires. So today we're talking about PureSound ones. There are obviously lots of different wires. These are the ones we both choose to use. So,
absolutely. Yeah.
On the various different snares we own, we've all got PureSound. I've pretty much got PureSounds in all of mine. So they come in various different things, different sizes, different shapes effectively of how they join, and there's lots of things. So we're just going to get rid of some confusion, explain a few things. Probably going to teach Tobes as much as I'm going to teach you. So
totally.
we're just going to educate about wires. Wires are overlooked. They are quite a key part of a snare drum sound. Obviously a snare drum differs from the rest of the kit purely because these are attached to it. It isn't a tom, but it's a tom if you take these off. So that's where they sort of originated from, is snare drums on the battlefield and directing how troops need to move and things like that. They were snare wires. So snare wires make the drum in between your legs sound different from the rest of the kit. So let's talk about a few different things. Obviously they come in different sizes. So these are all just 12, 13, 14. That's nothing particularly exotic. That's all just different snares if you've got a side snare or a main snare or something like that. And these are all, I'm going to hold them up. These are all 20 strands. That is literally just the number of curled wires in that grouping. But if we hold up this one, that's a 16. So just a bit different. The more wires you've got, effectively the more buzz you've got. That's quite obvious. But the more of the snare drum is affected by the width. So imagine most snare drums 14-inch. If these are 2-inch wide, that's a chunk of the middle of the drum having the snare wires on. So different amounts of actual strands will affect your sound. So if you imagine we grab this bad boy, which we'll talk about later, there's a 30 strand. So a few drums come with these as standard, different signature models and things like that, because the artist chooses to use them. But they're actually a really cool tool to just sort of get a different vibe out of a drum you already own. And this is a great thing with these. These are sort of cheaper accessories that you can re-renovate and sort of jig a snare drum you already own. And that's the great thing for them, because you can take them on off, they don't take a lot of effort. So, do you want to tell us how you first heard about PureSound? I've been playing them for years, but you're just telling us about sound engineers. So.
Yeah, my insight to PureSound was purely actually that when I was on tour years and years ago, doing a long tour, and I was getting quite a lot of buzz off my snare when I was playing toms and so on, and it was a sound engineer who came up to me and said, "Can you do something about your snare? We're finding it very, very hard to mix," and so on and so forth. And at that particular point, I was very early in my sort of career, and it was my ignorance really. I was trying everything with regards to the drum tuning and so on. And it was a sound engineer who said to me, "Can you try changing your wires?" And I had never to that point thought about changing my wires. That obviously every snare came, this is going back maybe, 15 years. Every snare came with factory sort of setting wires. So I went down and I grabbed, I can't think where I was, somewhere in Scotland, I grabbed some PureSound and I just chose, it was a blaster, which was a standard, I think that's one of the most standard.
It's the most common one that we sell, yeah.
It was a blaster and I put it on and it literally was like PIMP my snare. Suddenly I had less buzz. My snare at that point was a very, very basic snare, and I went from a kind of a very cheap car to Rolls Royce basically. It really made all the difference with regards to the quality of the sound, especially miking up, and the warmth and the depth that I got from the PureSound. It was a dramatic change, and it made me realise that actually, especially drummers, that if you're potentially a drummer on a budget, and you want to get your snare sounding extremely professional, it actually starts with the wires, the heads, and so on. And it was just a really quick and fantastic sort of insight for me. And it was a sound engineer who said to me, "Try changing the wires." As simple as that. It was not another drummer. And from that moment on, it's been really interesting throughout my career. I always look at sort of mates' snares, especially guys in the West End, when you're in a booth and it's mic'd the whole time for that consistency. It tends to always be PureSound. And there's a lot of guys are using the variety, and in booths I work in, sometimes it's the equalizer, predominantly the blasters, for a fantastic all-round snare. But that's how I came about with PureSound was purely on recommendation from a sound engineer to get consistency out of my drum, less spill, less buzz, and so on from sort of the factory wires that I had on the drum, and the difference was significant.
And with regards to factory wires, obviously all the different brands make their own wires and different things. So we'll actually do an A and B, and we'll show you a snare drum, which lots of people have always started with, and we'll do a before and after and sort of show you with the factory and then with one of these.
I was also asking you earlier, just very, very quickly, the blaster we were saying is one of the most sort of commonly used, but we were looking at the difference between, I was saying to Rob earlier, what's the difference between the Custom here and the Custom Pro, which has got a really interesting beveled edge that you were telling me about the Custom Pro in particular. What's this beveled edge for?
So basically, it's this is where you start getting geeky with your drums, and I'll show you. If you actually zoom in, that is the very subtle difference. That's all it is. So if you look, it's got little bent-in corners, and this one's just got a flat plate all the way along. These are designed that if you imagine underneath the drum, you're going to have a little bit of a gap because of the beveled corners, and it's just for when you're in the studio, you're going to get less buzz, and it should be, theoretically, easier to tune and all the other advertisement things that they spiel along to try and get you to buy it, but it actually works. The little corners, when it's held underneath, just lift it off a bit, and they're quite clever. If you imagine, these are all very similar, and they're just designed for each different person to have their own choice, their own little take and personality on their snare drum. Obviously, lots of snare drums are all mass produced, and then this is what makes it personal to you. So yeah, little subtle difference.
And obviously, actually, depending on heads, wires do work differently with different types of heads, thickness and so on, a different response.
Yes.
So that comes from exploring the wires and the heads as well.
Snare wires are only part of the golden triangle. Top head, bottom head, snare wires. So these are only one element. So, but they're an element that will drastically change the sound very quickly, because you'll notice. And the other thing is, lots of these wires, you could be replacing ones that are broken. A couple of strands might have fallen off, and then it just buzzes and rattles all the time. If a strand falls off and curls up, it breaks the bottom head. So a new set of wires are crucial. You've done that before, haven't you?
I have. In fact, the tour I've just got back from yesterday, we were on tour in Sweden. I was touring in Sweden with a band for 4 days. And prior to going out there, the last time I was out there, the sound engineer said to me, could you recommend a snare that I buy? And every time I go out there, they give me a beautiful kit to use. And he was just saying, we cannot get the right sound out of the snare. And I said to him, try a certain type of heads, but also get some PureSound wires for the snare, and let's just see where we go from there. And this time when we went out to Sweden, he was using PureSound wires on the snare, and it's the same snare drum, and I kid you not, it was just a completely different 4 days. And they, as sound engineers, were thrilled with the result. He didn't have to buy a new snare.
And that is just different personality.
As simple as that. And it was just really interesting for me to see that, that they had bought some PureSounds, put them on, and it was brilliant. It sounded fantastic. Same drum.
And that's how easy it is. So let's check it out. We'll do like a before and after on a pearl snare for you. So that's the snare with its original factory wires. So what we're going to do is just quickly show you how quick and easy it is to do. So we're just going to take these wires here, which are the blasters. This brings up a whole different topic of, do you use strand, like plastic strand, or this one here, this one here's got it, or the little string. It's personal preference. Lots of people swear by one and lots of people swear by the other. Personally, I use both on my different snares.
Do you now?
When you're switching it over, so we've got our nice new wires, nice PureSounds, you have to make sure when you're threading these through that you get each side of the drum even. So if the snare wires are all on one side, it will choke the wood and it will all be skew with when you put it together. So Toby's going to show us perfectly how to do it, and I'm just going to explain what you're doing.
And Rob's done something that is, to me, because I'm slightly old and very annoying, is what I like to do is also just first of all even up there and get a little, already get it creased. And that's just purely a me thing, and the reason for that is so that it sits cleanly without this giving me any kind of spring or spring back as such on the head. Make sense? You don't have to do that. That is purely a me thing. All right?
That's just Toby being weird. He probably folds his underwear. The other top tip, if you imagine the throw-off side, you're going to start loose because you will eventually pull it on. And as you pull it on, it will put the wires under tension.
Thank you. This is like how many drummers does it take to change a snare wire?
So if you notice, we haven't actually touched either head. So the drum has still got the same tuning. All we're doing is showing you the new wires.
Okay, lovely. Check that out. Looking very nice. Okay, beautiful. And obviously from here, however you want to tighten these strains is up to you, but you can hear an instant, I'm hoping. Let me start off quite loose. Let's let the wires breathe just so we can hear. Okay, so we can hear the. If we bring them up and choke them slightly. Hopefully you're hearing. And again, this is a factory head. We could start to, and this is just how it came off the shelf. So that's all we're doing. We're trying to give you a clear demonstration of straight off the shelf. And whatever your preference, really. Lovely. Instantly, you can hear a lot more body to the drum. Really lovely.
So that was the blaster. This is 14-inch, 20 strands. They're pretty much the most common. This is your go to. Check it out, try it. Always got them in stock. They're not expensive. They will, as you've just hopefully made your own decision, they will change your snare pretty quickly. So that's the blaster. What else we've got? Basically, these are just a selection. PureSound makes so many different wires. They've got ones that look weird like this, but actually all designed for a purpose. So if you imagine if that's underneath the drum, the very center of the drum, so just about there, doesn't have any wires on. So it's to give the drum the ultimate amount of playability, and hopefully the air bouncing from the top head to the bottom head is already equalized, hence the name. So there isn't any wires right in the middle of the drum, and you've got two separate clusters of strands to make it easier to record with. This one at the end, which has bigger packaging, but that's because there's actually bigger coils. So if you imagine that is going to be a similar size and width as that one, but there are less strands because each strand is bigger. So that's, once again, different genres really. So if someone wants your heavy metal massive sound, there's less wires and they're bigger coils, so there's actually more air in there, gives the drum a bigger sound. So lots of different things. What we're going to try now is this bad boy. So we're going to do sort of a before and after with two drums like we just did. We're going to just go from a normal size snare strainer. You can see the difference. That is literally twice as big. That's got 30 strands. So that is what we're going to do next. And you're going to play some more drums.
Super.
So, exactly the same drum. I'm literally, like your Blue Peter moment. Here's one I prepared earlier. So, we'll hold them up. That one's got the standard. This one's got the bad boy, the 30 strain. 30 strain? 30 strand. So, let's hear the difference. So that is, so we basically done a that and that comparison. So comment below, tell us what you think. The other really cool thing that PureSound do, which I suppose is, for some people is going to be the topic of, oh, where do I get these or how do I do that, is they don't just make snare wires that are going to fit a modern or a new snare so you can replace it to get a different characteristic out of that drum. You can also retrofit. So if you've got a vintage drum, there's lots of different, obviously, as technology has moved on, most brands have sort of standardized how they do it. But obviously in the old days, you'd have the Premier way with the little hooks. You'd have snares with actual cradles under. You'd have like the sling glam way. So there's lots of different ways. So these ones here, which I'll actually get out and show you, are all the different sort of techniques for how you want to do that. So this one, if you've got, and you can spin it around, I just can't do left-handed. If you've got a vintage Luddy, so that one, the little T-rods will connect into that strainer, and if you look, it's actually quite a lot longer. So that's a 14. So they're both 14 inch, and obviously the copper bits at the bottom are the same, but they're that much longer. And that's just how they fit underneath. You get lots of different ones. So these ones here, when we were talking earlier about the little bent in bits or the milled ones, these are actually flat. And if anything, bend the other way. That's just because vintage drums fix that way. They also only have one hole in. So with a lot of the modern ones, you have 2 holes in for your string. This one is designed to fit under vintage drums that have like a hook system that you then tighten. So that's that one. Then what else have we got? If you've got a Pearl free floater, which is a fantastic drum, I've got a couple of them. You've played my one as well, and you quite liked it
absolutely,
as well. Yeah. It's way longer. So the actual cradle of a free floater would pick it up from the side because the drum is not drilled. So these are much longer than standard fit. And you used to only be able to put Pearl wires on a Pearl free floater. You can use PureSound. So there's lots of different vintage snare wires that you can put on and use for your drum. So you can renovate it and give it a bit of an MOT and have its TLC. So just to prove that, we're going to grab this drum on the side. So this is a 60s Dynasonic, which is old and retro. And like I was saying with the cradle, this is the old school way of mounting it. And the one with the little one hole in it is designed to fit in that screw there. So the whole cradle comes off. This is much, much longer to switch than we did that Pearl one we've just done. You have to take the whole cradle off, and then the cradle's got screws in, and then the wire will fit effectively upside down because that's fitting on the cradle and the cradle goes on the drum. But you can retrofit new wires to an old drum to make sure the old drum still sounds great.
And those are the original wires from 50 years ago, are they?
Yeah, these ones are. So lucky enough this drum's in good enough condition that you can do that. But basically PureSound try and cater for everything, and that's part of their success really, is because they sound great, they fit on every drum, and you can even retrofit them to a vintage drum, and that's incredible. That's why so many people play them, and that's why they're so great. The reason you get the different sounds, if you look on here, they're quite a coppery colour. So PureSound make it out of steel, copper and bronze, so you can have 3 different materials that your snare wires are made out of. These are all made in California, which is quite cool. So the snare wires will change the sound of your drum and will do it at relative ease and relatively cheaply. And you can, before you sell a drum and go, oh, I didn't like that one, or if you're just trying to sound like someone else, if you wanted to put a 30 strand on, you'll get a completely different sound. So it really is quite a, and this is just a selection. They do a lot more different wires in their range. So,
and it is a great way, if you're into your heads and if you're into wires, it's a great way of trying to get your own sound. It's a really nice way of customizing your own sound as well.
You can tailor it and give your snare a personality. And obviously your hands and how you hit it is obviously the characteristic you're going to get anyway, but you can actually tailor your gear and make it sound good too. So
pimp my snare.
Pimp my snare, I like that particular phrase. So check them out, they're all on the website. There's lots of variants. Obviously there's only a few. that we've played today, but check it out on the PureSound website. So I've been Rob.
I've been Tobes.
And this is Drum Addicts on Andertons TV. Check out PureSound wise.
See you next time.